Hello everyone, back in today's first video. We're doing the 9th and final Autumn 2020 update for today's first video. So it's going to be quite a long one. This has got two different things. So we're going to look at ENSO through the first part of this video, and then we'll look at August CET, central temperature, in the second part of the video. So more about that later on. But the first part of the video is going to be dedicated to ENSO. So we think we're going to have a La Nina for this autumn. In fact, La Nina looks like it's well and truly setting in now, so this is likely a developing La Nina autumn. So we'll be looking at autumns that are coinciding with developing La Ninas. Quite straightforward and simple. So that's what we'll do for the first half of this 9th and final autumn 2020 update. So just say it's going to be a busy day at GavsWeatherVids today. Coming up later on, you're going to have the penultimate GavsWeatherVids Sunny Roundup. I've only got two more of those to do, one today, one next week, and then that's it. They're done in favour of the winter updates, which start on Sunday the 6th of September. We're also going to have the ECO Measure France DWV long range update, so that's going to be coming up. That will be coming up later on this afternoon after the Sunday Roundup, probably around 3ish, I would have thought. And then we're going to be live streaming from 6 o'clock and have a live stream. We'll all check in, see how we're all doing. We'll be looking at winter 2020-21 long range forecast data with that one. So yeah, it's going to be a busy day at GavsWeatherVids. I hope you're enjoying all of the content. Please give us likes on videos if you're enjoying them. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments what you are thinking. This is going to be quite a long video, of course, so if you can't watch it all in one go, then don't worry, it will be placed on the autumn updates page either tonight or tomorrow morning, depending on how much time I have. Placed on the autumn updates page with written summary going over everything that we discuss in the video. I'm going to say a big thank you to Richard Trott, as ever, for the wonderful autumn GIF, autumn forecast or autumn update GIF. It'll be the last time you see this, because next week we've got the I've got a new GIF for the forecast itself. So yeah, but I've loved this autumn updates GIF that we have this year. I think the colours are just so bright and vibrant, really fantastic. So thanks so much, Rich. Thanks for the GIF. And I'm going to say a big thank you to James as well. We're going to see some ENSO information that James supplied us with some time ago now. So we'll be looking and reviewing that very shortly. Right then, so that's pretty much everything I'm going to tell you. So let's get on with the final autumn 2020 update. So as I say, we're going to be looking at ENSO. So this is how the latest sea surface temperature anomaly map is looking from NOAA for the 21st of August. ENSO, of course, is the cyclical warming and cooling of the equatorial Pacific Ocean. It's looking at sea surface temperature anomalies from Peru over in the west. Over in the east, I should say, to Indonesia over in the west. So we've got Indonesia in west, Peru is in the eastern part of the actual Pacific Ocean. Now you see this blue area on quite shore, quite a striking area of blue within an otherwise pretty warm Pacific Ocean, both to the south and to the north. That is the signature of La Nina. Colder than average sea surface temperature anomalies are spreading across the equatorial Pacific Ocean, and that is very much the signal for La Nina. So it looks like we already have La Nina, and we expect this to continue and probably strengthen a little bit through the autumn as well. That's certainly what the CFS V2 is forecasting. So here we go. We can see that where we are right now is somewhere around there. So around half a degree below average, just about reaching required La Nina threshold, which should be half a degree below average. We've got to do it over 5 tri-monthly periods as well. Looks like we should do that if CFS V2 forecast is correct, because black dash line, which is the ensemble mean, is dipping away further. So as we go to around November, for example, we're getting close to 1.5 degrees below average. So a week to almost borderline, quite moderate La Nina being forecast now by the CFS V2. I think it'll be a weak La Nina, I have to say. I'd be surprised if we get to moderate territory. But it is getting quite close to moderate La Nina. And so that's for the end of the year. And then as we go through into the start of 2021, it begins to lift the temperature up a little bit. The black dash line returns back to ENSO neutral. So that's a classic sort of weak to almost borderline moderate La Nina that we see there. for the autumn. So yes, very much confirming the idea that that this is likely to be a developing La Nina autumn. This current warm episode by season from CPC, NCP, NCEP and NOAA. Just to confirm that the most recent tri-monthly period for May, June, July actually went ever so slightly negative at minus 0.2. We can expect negativity, negative numbers to increase through the coming tri-monthly periods as well as we go into this La Nina event. So this is showing very reliable data all the way back to the 1950s. We've only been measuring ENSO really reliably since 1950. So, for example, the year of 1949-1950 did reliably have a La Nina event taking place. See that from those blue numbers just there. However, it is possible to go further back than that, not reliably, but it's possible to, and this has been done, reanalysis has been done to look at particularly the Southern Oscillation Index, measuring air pressures between Darwin and Tahiti, and to determine which years had El Nino, which years had La Nina, which years were ENSO neutral. So we can actually go back with the Southern Oscillation Index into the 1800s, and that's how this is measured. So James gave us this quite some time ago, but thank you so much, James Ackrill, for giving us this a long time ago now. But always very, very useful when we do our long range updates focusing on ENSO. So we can go back well into the 1800s with the Southern Oscillation Index, and so we can see here, for example, that 1865 was probably ENSO neutral through the first half of the year, and then El Nino through the second half of the year. Remember, this is just like reanalysis, so this is just going back, looking at the pressure patterns, and then creating a reanalysis of what was likely to be going on. So it looks like, as far back as we go into the 1800s, like 1869 to 1870 was like a La Nina. So we begin 1869 with like a weak El Nino, then we go ENSO neutral, and then through the autumn you see these negative numbers getting more negative. We see these negative numbers going into a weak La Nina. So it looks like winter of 1869-1870 was a weak La Nina, and that weak La Nina started through the autumn. So that's going to be the first year that we look at for our analogues today. It'll be the developing La Nina autumn of 1869. Another one is 1872. Look at this, 1872. We see these blue, negative blue colours appearing here, developing La Nina signal, starting in the summer this time, but developing as well through the autumn. And so we can also show you sort of reanalysis using the same methodology going back into the early part of the 20th century. So again, for example, we see here that we've got a developing La Nina going on. Where are you? So 908 has a developing La Nina going on around ENSO neutral through the first half of the year, and as we go into the autumn and on into winter, see the blue colours appearing, getting more negative. So yes, it looks like 1908 to 1909 had a weak La Nina going on. Another one would be 1916. There we go, year of 1916, ENSO neutral through the first half of the year, and then we get this quite moderate to almost quite a strong La Nina event setting up through the second half 1916 and into winter of 1916-1917, sort of a moderate La Nina to getting almost was borderline quite strong La Nina. So very simple what we're doing here, and so let's get on with the data. I think that's pretty much explained everything that's going on. So as I told you, the very first developing La Nina autumn is in fact 1869, and this one has above average heights out to our west. It has below average heights to our east. Winds are coming in from a northerly direction, so it looks like it's a pretty cold autumn. That one, it looks like it's a pretty cold autumn. Low pressure to the east, high pressure to the west, favouring sort of northerly winds. Our next developing landing year autumn is 1872, with again deep low pressure across the northern and western parts of Europe. So this is a very unsettled autumn. It may not be all that cold because there's no real northern blocking to force cold air out of the Arctic. So we haven't got that. We're just under a trough of low pressure. It's a deep trough across most of Western Europe. So that just looks like it will probably have been a very wet autumn in 1872. We have a cold autumn in 1879. This is the last time we had a yearly centering temperature in the 7s. And so all of the seasons in 1879 were colder than average, including the autumn of 1879. This with high pressure to our north and west. The winds had tended to be coming in from like a northerly direction. So it's a relatively dry but pretty cold signal in 1879 in the autumn. The next developing landing year autumn is 1886. This one is somewhat different. It has high pressure over Scandinavia, low pressures to our southwest. Probably a dryish and quite warmish sort of autumn. That one, dryish and quite warmish, I think. We've got 1889 showing up next with above average heights to our north. Remember, this is all reanalyzed. This is all reanalyzed, so it's not reliable. The reliable part of this will be into the 1950s, but it's interesting to show you this. Anyway, I think it's interesting to show you this. So, 1889. Again, above average heights over to the north country, below average heights to the south. Winds probably favouring to be coming in from an easterly direction this time, bringing easterly winds. So that could be quite a coldish autumn, I think, actually, in 1889. Probably quite dry. Autumn 1892 is showing up next with, again, below average heights extending through western parts of Europe, above average heights up towards Greenland and over onto the eastern side of Europe. The jet stream is pushed southwards as well. That looks like a very unsettled and potentially very wet autumn in 1892. Autumn 1903 is our next developing landing year autumn with low pressure again over and to the west of the country, bringing winds from west. That looks like it's quite a wet, unsettled and mild Atlantic-driven autumn. The next autumn is 1908. This is a much drier autumn with a blocking area of high pressure to the north of Scotland and bringing in the winds from the east. That's quite a dry autumn, potentially quite a cold autumn as well. Winter of 1908-1909 was a cold winter, and so the pattern of that cold winter is possibly setting up there through the autumn of 1908. We've got a very wet autumn showing up for 1916. Developing La Nina autumn of 1916 brings low pressure in from off the Atlantic. So yeah, very Atlantic driven. Wet, windy, but probably relatively mild autumn in 1916. That's preceding a very cold winter for 1916-1917 as well, by the way. Autumn of 1924 is our next developing landing autumn. Low pressure this time is out to the west. Winds are coming in from a southwesterly direction. That should be a relatively mild but also quite wet and unsettled autumn 1924. This one is much more anticyclonic. It's 1933 with high pressure to our north and low pressure is to our south. Winds with this one are coming in from an easterly direction. That's a drier autumn, obviously, and potentially rather cold, especially later on with those east winds. Remember, autumn is a transitional season, so east winds in September are going to be relatively warm. East winds in November can potentially be quite cold. The autumn of 1942 shows up next, and that's showing above average heights over to western country, below average heights are up to the north. Jet stream is pushed northwards as well. That's an anticyclonic autumn with a lot of dry weather on offer. And quite a warmish autumn as well, quite a mild autumn with winds coming in from off the Atlantic Ocean. Then we've got the autumn of 1945. The autumn of 1945 is our next autumn with high pressure to our north. Winds are in from the east. That's a dry autumn in 1945, a dry and quite warmish autumn as well, I think. Now we get to like the first of the reliable years. This is like autumn 1949 for 49-50, and we know that 1950 is like the first year that we've got here within the reliable part of CPC and CP and NOAA's season by season tables. So this autumn is like a warm but also unsettled autumn. It has high pressure in Scandinavia back to Eastern Europe. It has low pressure out to our west. We're going to be bringing up winds from a southerly direction with this, so it's quite a warm autumn. You would have thought. It's very warm in September of 1949, exceptionally hot September. The rest of the autumn is very mild, but also quite wet. And then we have the autumn of 1954, again with low pressure to the north of the country. High pressure is to south. Winds are coming in from a westerly direction. That's an Atlantic-driven, wet and also mild autumn in 1954. 1964 is more anticyclonic. This is a dry anticyclonic autumn with a developing La Nina as high pressure just generally sits around much of Western Europe. Autumn of 1970 has a developing La Nina and it has high pressure to the south and low pressure is to the north. Winds are in from the west, so that is a mild autumn, probably wettest up in the north. Developing La Nina in 1973 has above average heights pulled out to the west of the country, below average heights to the east. Winds are kind of coming in from more of a northwesterly direction. So that's a dry but potentially rather cool autumn, chilly autumn, 1973. Quite a long gap then until we have another developing La Nina. So we go through to the autumn of 1983. This La Nina never really took off, but did about a little bit through the autumn. So this one with high pressure again to the south, low pressure to the north. So this is a relatively mild autumn. Quite a bit of dry weather as well through October and November. It does have a wet September after the hot summer 1983. There is a wet September. It's just generally quite mild through the rest of the autumn. This is a more definitive developing La Nina, for weak La Nina anyway, for winter 84-85. So this one in the autumn of 1984 is just very wet and also very mild, really. First sort of teaser for the winter is up here. There is some higher pressure up towards Svalbard. That becomes much more influential, that high pressure, much more influential for the winter of 84-85. But actually for the autumn, it's a very mild autumn, but also very wet Atlantic-driven autumn. This is a strong developing La Nina autumn with above average heights again. It's 1988, above average heights again through most of Western Europe. Low pressure is up to the northeast and out into the Atlantic. Generally doing something like that. It's a very mild autumn generally, but it does get a little bit colder in November of 1988. And then we've got the autumn of 1995 showing up with a developing weak La Nina. This one anticyclonic again, above average heights over to the sort of north and east country, below average heights out to southwest. Warm autumn, winds are pulling up from a southerly direction. There's a lot of warm weather on offer with this autumn, but it is relatively dry as well. This is a cooler, wetter autumn in 1998 with below average heights, low pressure to our east, above average heights out to the west. It's much more unsettled autumn, very wet October. And then November is quite mixed but also cold at times. Autumn 2005 has a developing weak La Nina as well. This one has above average heights to our over to the east of the country. Winds are sort of coming in from a southerly direction. This is a very warm autumn, really warm autumn, particularly September, October, and the first half of November. Second half of November goes a lot colder in 2005. Autumn 2007 has above average height centered over and just to the west of the country. A dry autumn and a mild autumn too after the deluge, absolute deluge of a summer in 2007. And then 2010, look at this, autumn 2010 has very intense northern blocking up towards Greenland with below average heights, low pressure across Western Europe. We're bringing in a wind from a northerly to northeasterly direction. Quite a cold autumn, especially late in November. It turns severely cold as we set up the December to remember. But the rest of the autumn is a bit on the cool side as well. Then we've got 2016. This is a warm and dry autumn with a weak developing La Nina, high pressure sitting over to the east of the country. Winds are coming in from an east-southeasterly direction. Dry and warm in the autumn of 2016. Then the last autumn that had a developing La Nina is 2017. 2017 has high pressure to the west and also to the northwest, some northern blocking up here, low pressure, weak low pressure to our east. It's a cooler autumn, that one, actually. There's been a lot of warm autumns lately. 2017 is actually a slightly cooler autumn, quite mixed, and it does, of course, have a lot of hurricanes. It was a hyperactive hurricane season. And we have the remains of Hurricane Ophelia on the 16th of October 2017, but the skies Martian. Right, let's put all of that together then, or some of them. So we're going to look at all Septembers combined. Now, for our all combined chart, what we're doing is just looking at the reliable part of the analogues. So that is from 1950 onwards. So for that, we have got like 1954, we've got 1964, we've got 1970, we've got 1973, we've got 1983, we've got 1984, 1988, 1995, 1998, 2005, 2007... 2010, I think, got 2010, yep, 2016 and 2017 as well. So this is how all Septembers combined are looking with a developing La Nina. And very unsettled, look at this, very unsettled signal for September. Low pressure over the UK and much of northern Europe, bringing in winds from the Atlantic. It looks like it's a very wet September is favoured here. Very unsettled September being favoured. Complete flip around for October. This is how all Octobers combined are looking with a developing La Nina. We tend to have high pressure over to the west of the country. Low pressure is up to the northwest. Jet stream doing something like that. A much drier and a much warmer signal for these Octobers with a position on that ridge bringing up the air from the southwest. You expect quite a warm October, but also a pretty dry month would be favoured there as well. And then all Novembers combined are looking like this, with the above average heights then pulling out to the northwest. The below average heights are sinking in across northern Europe. Winds could well be turning into the northwest on average, with a lot of these developing La Nina Novembers. So yeah, pretty dry signal again. So after September, the autumn does dry out. We have a wet September, then the autumn dries out. The difference is in the placement of the ridge. October, the ridge is providing us with quite a warm month. In November, the ridge is providing us with potentially quite a coolish or even pretty cold month. And then this is how all autumns combined are looking with a developing La Nina. So anticyclonic signal overall, above average heights tending to be over to the west of the country, below average heights tending to be to the east of the country. A reasonable amount of dry weather would be expected there. And probably, although September, of course, is deviating. September is very wet, favoured to be very wet, but October and November favouring a decent amount of dry weather. And yeah, variable temperatures. So September would be cool with all of that rain. October would be warm and dry. November would probably be quite dry too, but rather colder. And that's the first part of the 9th and final Autumn 2020 update. So it could be a bit of more of an extended one. It's going to be a little bit more extended for this last update. But that's it for the ENSO data anyway. So I hope you enjoyed that first part of the video. Make sure you've liked the video and whatnot. And yeah, and we'll see you back very shortly. And we're going to look at something for August. We're going to look at the August CET. We're going to project. Haven't got the August CET yet, of course. It's not going to be in for over another week. But we are going to project where we think, or where my good friend Simon from the Weather Outlook Forum thinks we're going to finish up with this CET for this August. So more about that very, very soon. Go get yourself a cup of tea and some nibbles. I'll have a glass of water as I'm still on a diet, and I'll see you back in 2 seconds' time. Okay, we're back. And we're ready to resume the 9th and final Autumn 2020 update from GavsWeatherVids. So if you've enjoyed this update so far, then don't forget to give us a like on the video. Let us know in the comments what you think. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. So in the first part of the video, we was talking about ENSO. We was looking at autumns that coincide with developing La Niñas. We've done that. We're now going to have a look, or try to, at something for August. So it's very difficult when we come to the end of the last month of updates to get in data for the last month, because we're always doing it before the end of the month, if you see what I mean. We're doing this on the 22nd of August. We've still got several days of August to go. So we're always sort of projecting, or trying to project, where we think it's most likely we're going to end up with our temperature and rainfall for this August. We can't really project for rainfall because there's been a lot of variable rainfall this month, really. So we can't project for rainfall, but we are going to project for temperature for the CET. So let's get on with that now then. So here we go. So central temperature is for August is currently standing at 19.0. We're currently standing at 19.0 provisional with the CET to the 21st of August. So it has been a very warm to hot August. Things are cooling down now. Where are they going to cool down to? My good friend Simon, aka Global Warming at the Weather Outlook Forum, has done a projection, and that projection is suggesting that the CET has it has a range of error, but it's suggesting like the central landing zone for the CET is likely to be 17.9, just under 18 degrees, just under 18 degrees at 7.9. It's like the central landing zone. Now, obviously, there's a bit of margin of error with that, so it could be a little bit lower than that, say 17.7. It could be from 17.7 all the way to like 18.2. But to be honest, Simon's projections are normally very, very good. So I would go with that, really. 17.9, maybe 17.8, possibly 18.0. That is a possibility. But I think probably 17.9 or 17.8 is most likely, because Simon's projections are usually, they're usually pretty good. So, what are we going to do with this final part of the 9th and final Autumn 2020 update? So we think we're going to have a landing zone of like 17.9. So that would mean that this is one of the warmest August on record. That would mean that this is one of the warmest August on record. Not the warmest. The hottest August is back in 1995. Let's have my notes at 19.2. So nowhere near as hot as that, but you know, it's up there with like the top sort of 10 to 15 warmest August, or probably the top 10 warmest August on record, really. So what we're going to have to do with this is just have a look, because we're going to be within that range, albeit perhaps at the lower end of it. But what we're going to have to do with this, I think, is just have a look at autumns that follow like the warmest August on record, really. So quite straightforwardly, these are the autumns that are following the hottest, the hottest August on record, as 2020 won't be the hottest, and it'll be somewhat a long way short of the hottest as well, but it is up there like in the top 10, top 12, top 13, something like that. So the first one is 1899. So August 1899 had a CET of 17.8, perhaps very, very close actually, perhaps very, very close to where this August CET is going to finish up. The autumn of 1899 looks like that, quite an anti-cyclonic autumn with high pressure over the UK and Western Europe. Low pressure is to the north. Jet stream doing something like that. It's a dry and warm autumn in 1899. The next autumn is going to be 1911. So August 1911 had a CET of 18.2. 18.2 in August 1911. The autumn of 19, very hot summer, very dry summer, but the autumn of 1911 is very wet. It's a very wet autumn. It's a mild autumn, but it is also a very wet autumn as well. So after a hot summer, we have a wet autumn. Next, we have 1933. That showed up, of course, earlier on. So this August had a central temperature of 17.6. Basically, we're looking at all August that had a CET above 17.5, really. So this one had a CET of 17.6. And again, it has high pressure above average heights over to the north, low pressure to our south, winds in from the east, quite a dry, but also quite a coldish autumn, I think, in 1933. Then we have the autumn of 1947. August 1947 was a very hot month with a CET of 18.6. 18.6 was the CET for August 1947. The autumn of 1947 is dry and anticyclonic. High pressure sits over Western Europe. Jet stream is moved northwards as well. There's a lot of dry but also quite warm weather in the autumn of 1947. Then we have the autumn of 1955 following an August CET of 18.1. This one with higher pressure to our west and northwest, lower pressure to our east, winds tend to be coming in more from the north. This is a rather colder and drier autumn, in 1955, very anticyclonic autumn. A long gap then, there isn't another really hot August until 1975. So, and August 1975 is a really hot month with a CET of 18.7. This one, this autumn, has high pressure over to the east of the country, so of course this is part of the drought years. Many of the seasons from like winter 74-75 to summer 76 are dry. This is a dry season, although it does have quite a wet September. Interesting, there is a wet September in 1975 in the midst of all of the dryness and all of the arid summers and that. We don't have to wait one more year to get another hot August. It's 1976, and probably not as hot as a lot of people might think. This one has a CET of 17.6. It was generally a very hot month, but what brings the CET down is cold nights. By summer 76, we have gone into an arid climate, really. We're like a desert climate, actually, by the summer of 1976, especially late on in that summer. So the ground is just so dry and so baked and so lacking of moisture that as we get into like August of 76, especially earlier on in the month, interestingly, not later, where it turns more humid, but earlier on in the month, actually, there are quite a lot of cold nights during August 76. Hot days, cold nights, almost like you would expect in a desert, like Nevada or Arizona, somewhere like that, with cold nights, but very warm to quite hot days. And so that's why the CET is not quite as hot for August 76 as you might think. As I say, it has CET of 17.6. This is an exceptionally wet autumn. Of course, we break the drought finally over the August bank holiday weekend of 1976. Harold Wilson appoints a minister for drought, and then within days the heavens open up, and so it's just a very, very wet autumn this, and by the end of it we'd actually sort of made up a lot of the rainfall deficit within one season. That's how exceptionally wet the autumn of 1976 was. Phenomenally wet autumn. 1984, of course, this showed up in the earlier analogs package as well. Follows a central temperature for August of 17.6 again. This one with low pressure out to west of the country, winds are in from a westerly direction. That's a wet and warm autumn in 1984. 1990 is our next hot August with a CET of 18.0 for August 1990. This one is a rather cooler autumn with high pressure out to the northwest, low pressure to our south and east. Winds tend to be coming in from the east. So variable temperature for September, a mild or quite a warm October, and then a little bit of a cold November actually in 1990. 995 again, this one showed up in the first half of the video for the developing La Niñas as well. So this one is the hottest August on record. August 995 has an extraordinarily hot CET of 19.2 to date. This year won't beat it. So to date, that is the only time that the CET back 1659 has reached the 19s in the month of August. So one and only time it's happened. And yeah, so as we was explaining in the first part of the video, this is a dry autumn, really, although again it does have quite a wet September. November is also a little bit on the wet side as well, but October is exceptionally dry. Has lots of high pressure to the north, low pressure to the southwest. It's a warm autumn, winds generally coming up from a southerly direction. The main rainfall for this autumn is definitely in September, which is quite a wet month. There is quite a bit of rain in November too, with a very dry and warm November. This, of course, is preceding the cold winter of 95-96. The next hot autumn, hot August, I should say, is 1997. I have to wait 2 years, and then we get another one in 1997. Very nearly gets into the 19s with the CET again. This one has an August CET of 18.9. So close, it's so close to getting into the 19s. So that's gone wrong. Actually, that's gone wrong. I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to pause the video. I'll see you in 2 seconds. Right, sorry about that, everyone. I got 995 up twice. Don't know why I did that, but at least I noticed it. At least I noticed the error. So this is the correct analog. This is autumn 1997, following that hot August of 1997 with a CET of 18.9. Very nearly another 19 Celsius CET August. This one is also quite an anticyclonic autumn, with above average heights again sitting over the country. Below average heights are out to the west. Winds are tend to be coming in from like a southerly, southeasterly direction in this autumn. So it's dry and warm for September and the first half of October. Goes dry and quite cold in the second half of October. And then the Atlantic is unleashed. In fact, they jumped, didn't it? The Atlantic is unleashed for November 1997, which is a warm but wet month. And then another hot August in 2003. This one has a central temperature of 18.3 in August 2003. Autumn 2003 has a bizarre sort of anticyclonic scene across most of the northern hemisphere. Very, very strange setup through this autumn. So it's just quite a dry and warmish sort of autumn, really. So September 2003 is like an extension of summer, really, for most of it. Quite dry and warm until like the last week of the month. October is a little bit colder, but again, mainly dry, quite high pressure dominated, but it is a bit colder in October of 2003. And then November is just like a nondescript, sort of dull, dank, and relatively mildish sort of month, I think. Then the last sort of really warm August is 2004. Doesn't reach the 18s with a CET, but it does have a CET of 17.6. So it does have a CET of 17.6. The autumn of 2004 is looking like that. So overall, it's quite an anticyclonic autumn again. This time, the high pressure is pushed back into the Atlantic, low pressure to the northeast. Fair amount of dry weather, but you know, also quite a mildish and again nondescript autumn. Has a very dry and warm September again, but October is a lot wetter, but around average temperatures, and then November 2004 is generally reasonably dry, I think, but also very mild. So just lastly, putting all of that together, this is how all Septembers combined are coming out following autumns with a CET of 17.5 all the way up to the warmest on record. So we see that for all Septembers combined, we have quite an unsettled signal again, actually. Below average heights tending to be to our north and east. Above average heights pulled out into our west, a mid-Atlantic ridge to our west. Winds are sort of coming in from a west or northwesterly direction. Unsettled, you know, quite wet with this September signal, and quite cool as well. Next up, we have October. This is how all Octobers combined are looking following the warmest August on records with CET of 17.5. So we tend to have high pressure to our north and northwest. Low pressure tends to be to our south. Winds tend to be coming in from light and easterly direction, probably on average with these Octobers. Relatively dry again. Could be a little bit colder though, with those easterly winds a little bit more favour. And then all Novembers combined, following the warmest August on record, look like that, with above average heights to our north and east, below average heights to our southwest. Winds are coming in from like a sort of southeasty to slightly easty direction. Again, these autumns do look relatively dry. Overall, except September's a little bit more unsettled. But generally, this is quite a dry scene, I think, for these autumns. But you know, probably a little bit on the cooler side, actually, as the winds are coming in off the continent, especially later on. Finally, all autumns combined, following an August CET of 17.5 or more, right the way up to 19.2, looking like that. We have above average heights to our north and northwest, below average heights to our south. It's an anti-cyclonic signal for these autumns overall. There are some unsettled ones in there, of course, as we know, but overall, it's a settled anti-cyclonic signal for these autumns, albeit with a more unsettled September, and then it gets drier as things go along, and possibly gets a little bit colder as well. So that's it. That is like the end. We've come to the end now of our autumn update. So we can do no more. Let's just get rid of that and put the gift back one last time. There we go. There's Richard's gift. So we'll just show you that for the final time for these updates. So yeah, that's it. We've come to the end of the updates. We can do no more. All we can do now, well, we're going to do the scene one around, of course, on Saturday. So I say it's the end of the update. It's kind of like the end of the analog side of this, but there is still the third and final season one roundup for the autumn of 2020 to do, and we'll get that done for you on Saturday. But in terms of these updates, that's it. Come to the end, and all that remains after the season one roundup is to give you the forecast, and we're going to give you GavsWeatherVids Autumn 2020 forecast a week today, Sunday the 30th of September. We will release the GavsWeatherVids 2020 Autumn forecast, and we'll see how the data looks then. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like. Let us know in the comments what you think. Make sure you are subbed to the channel. This video will be placed on the autumn updates page with a written summary going over everything that we discussed in the video, and I'll get that up for you either this evening or tomorrow morning, depending on how much time I have after this evening's live stream. So we've got GavsWeatherVids Sunday Roundup coming up after this video, so that'll be coming up just after lunch. We've got the ECHF Metro France and DWV long range update coming up mid-afternoon, and then this evening, 6 o'clock, we'll be live streaming, and we're going to look at winter 2020-21 long range forecast data in the live stream. So I'll see you then. But more videos before that. Right, at 42 minutes, very long update for this final update for the autumn 2020. At 42 minutes, that's all for now. And thank you so much for watching.